All right, so welcome back to Happy Hour with Heather and Guest. I'm joined by Jamie from Heron. I hope I'm pronouncing the band name correctly.
You are.
Um, so Heron from Vancouver, British Columbia. The latest album is the third full length release called Empires of Ash, and it'll be released December 2nd. So, my first question, of course, I'm familiar with Heron the bird from there are herons near where my parents live in South Carolina. I was just curious if that's where the band name came from, the bird, or
It definitely did. Yeah, they had named it Heron, before I had joined the band, but it's named after the bird. We have big, great blue herons up here as well, so quite
gotcha.
majestic sounding. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it was actually really interesting because the album and the music is obviously on the heavy side, and herons. That's not something I think of when I think of herons necessarily. So it's a really
Yeah, and there's actually some more like folk or psychedelic acts out there with the same name who we talk to when we figure that we're different enough that we can operate with the same name. But yeah, doesn't exactly evoke a really heavy sound, which is nice. Nice to surprise people.
yeah, there's a cool sort of paradox to it. Um, you the name doesn't really reveal what you're in store for necessarily,
That's
but
good. Yeah.
but it was great. I got a chance to listen to it. Um, for those of you out there who aren't as familiar with the music, it's definitely like a post metal doom, but really heavy on the sludge, I would say. Um, the first song off of the album, Rust and Rot, reminded me of the band Noothgrush very
Okay.
much. Uh, the the other songs on the album I felt were less like pure sludge, more of like a doomy kind of post metal feel.
Yeah,
Uh,
I would definitely sort of agree with that. That's sort of what we leaned on this one. Every
yeah,
album tends to have a different focus. The last one was pretty abrasive and sludgy with some black metal parts, but this one's really atmospheric and building and post
yeah,
rock. And that's just sort of what came out after the pandemic. That's what was in our brain. We started
sure.
jamming. But it's nice to open it with a big crusher like Rust and Rot, which is just 10 minutes of filth, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was it was interesting because going into it, I I was aware of the genre that it would again it would be difficult to pick one descriptive word to sort of categorize the music because it is a combination of all those things. Um, but that first track kind of I was like, oh wow, okay, this is what I'm in. That really, I mean, it really sets the tone for uh, for what you're in store for.
Well,
Um,
I'm glad to hear it. I'd like to hear that people can't necessarily categorize us right away. Might not necessarily be the most original band out there or breaking down barriers, but we're doing what we're doing. I'm glad people
well,
like it.
I mean, also like the first track reminded me of Noothgrush, but it
Hmm.
didn't sound like there was a unique sound to it.
Well, that's great.
Um,
And probably with Scott and Ross, they've known each other forever, so they really play off each other really well.
cool. Yeah, I mean, I really urge if you're out there watching this, I definitely urge you to pick up Empires of Ash when it comes out December 2nd. If you're into any of the music that the genres I've mentioned or the bands that we've talked about. If you're just into good music, definitely give this a listen. I'm actually looking for. I know this is the third full length,
Yeah.
so I'm looking forward to going back and doing a deep dive on the other albums in the catalog. Now that I'll work my way backward.
Well, that's great.
Um,
Very nice of you to say. I appreciate the kind words.
well, this is something I always tell my co-host Heather is that anytime I find a contemporary band who can kind of take the baton from a band that I used to love listening to, but who isn't making new music,
Hmm.
it's a really great for me as a fan just to know that okay, well now I can switch to Heron because they'll
Yeah,
they'll take the baton from, another sludge band that isn't as active.
yeah, I agree. Like if someone says, "Yeah, this band's really carcass worship," my ears are gonna perk up. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's all. I mean, it was interesting as I went to look at some of your social media pages, and I think you did a show with Bort
Yes,
at
good
one
friends of
point.
ours.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's funny because Heather and I talked about their music a couple of weeks ago on the show. Um, just because I was a fan of The Simpsons and saw their name,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, well, that's probably a sign that we should talk about their music. And then I saw you had played with them at some point.
Oh yeah, we did a tour back there. You can actually see the poster back there. We did a tour
Yeah,
about them. They're great. They're very talented. I was lucky enough to be able to do some guest vocals on their last record, and we played with them a bunch. And I think they're great. They're more of a desert sort of like swamp rock, stoner rock, and
yeah,
we tend to get on a lot of shows like that, stoner rock, what have you, and we're not really that. So we tend to be surprising, which I like. We can get into a lot of different sort of heavier, psychedelic, or sort of doom genres or shows, and just sort of be different from what
yeah.
is on the bill.
There's a lot of. I mean, you definitely fit into that.
Hmm.
Into like you said, there's I think there's a lot of crossover with those genres.
Yeah,
Um, I certainly wouldn't peg you, the band, as fitting squarely into like the desert rock scene.
definitely.
Um, but
Vocally, I think especially.
yeah, but like if you were on a bill with other bands like that, like for example, Bort, I wouldn't. I would be like, oh, that makes sense.
Absolutely. And like,
Yeah,
some dirty punk bands like our friends in Stork and what have you, it's just nice that we can just sort of fit it in there and it doesn't seem completely out of place. It's nice to sort of
definitely.
mix it up a bit. You get some clean vocals, some psychedelic guitar, and then you got some real doom with some guy losing his mind. So a nice variation.
Yeah, I mean it's also it would be great if you're a fan of some of those less abrasive genres and you're looking to kind of expand your horizons a little bit. Um, Empires of Ash would be a great way to kind of push the envelope a little bit because there are some of those later genres being touched upon in the later tracks, um, much more melodic playing, even though the vocals are harsh throughout.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
that
There's nothing
that's
we
sort
can do about that.
no,
Yeah.
but that's that's sort of like a the universal factor that unites all the tracks.
I suppose it
Um,
does. Yeah, yeah. And
so
it's when we come to the songs, we don't really, nothing's really off the table. Everyone comes to it with riffs or ideas, changes or what have you. And sometimes the albums take a while. We tend to have a 2 year schedule with full lengths, but sometimes they'll come together really quick and it's a really sort of noisy, sludgy affair. But this last one was just sort of lots of breathing room and up and downs and swells all the time with me screaming
so
my full head off.
so was this the majority of this album was put together either after the pandemic or during
Yeah.
the pandemic or
Yeah, yes. Of course, we're all sort of marinating, absorbing stuff, practicing, and what have you. But we didn't really start writing any of it until right after, and it came together pretty quickly.
gotcha. So the subject matter may not be based on it, but the genesis of the album, it all sort of happened due to having the time to kind
Yeah,
of
yeah. Our last one came out basically at the start of the pandemic, and we had planned, like all bands, to sell more records, tour, and go farther and farther out. But like most bands, that disrupted that, so we're sort of back to square one. But instead of touring the other record and sort of writing songs on the road and jamming, we were at home a lot more during that initial stage.
right.
So yeah, it came out differently. I think the same sort of processes, but just a much different album. I think otherwise.
Sure. I think that's going to be the case. The context is always going to shape the production.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely.
but so this so in terms of the songwriting, it's really a collaborative kind of thing where you all bring ideas to the process, and
Definitely.
the
Yeah.
songs sort of develop from that.
Yeah, yeah, they do. Usually we write a song and then we just rehearse it till we're great, but not too rehearsed. One of the other ones on this new album was changing right up to the day we recorded it. And the stuff we added is some of our favorite parts. Not usually our process, but that's good. But everyone brings something, brings changes, what have you. Nothing is really sacred. We don't really have any sort of hurt feelings or set sort of roles. I do most of the lyrical content and the subject matter and what have you, but runs by all the band first. If someone doesn't like something, of course, we all talk about that. Everyone's got to agree.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, it sounds like you've got a process that works, and it's really fruitful. It made a good album,
Yeah,
so
appreciate it.
that's great. So, uh, obviously, this album will be out next month. So my guess is the focus will be on promoting that. But moving, do you have plans to tour or do anything um, along those lines?
Yeah, but we've got a few shows in November and December here to sort of fill out the year and play this stuff live. And then come January, we'll just hopefully hit the ground running with a spring tour, some festivals and what have you.
Gotcha. So if you're in the Vancouver area in the near future, definitely go check out Heron. If you're in Canada, be on the lookout for an upcoming tour or possibly the UK. And then obviously people can, I would imagine I know you're on Instagram and Facebook, but you probably it's probably easy to get news if people want to find anything out about the band or the next move. Um,
Absolutely. You can go to our socials or our label, Sludge Lord Records. We're also all over Spotify and all of those things if you want to listen. Just want to be appreciative if you could listen. It'd be great.
yeah. Well, so come December, pick up this album. But before then, there's a lot of other music that the band has made that's already out there. So it might behoove you to pick up some of the old stuff so that you have an idea of what the band is like. So you're prepared. Don't
Yeah,
do what I did. Don't go backwards. Go forward.
fair
But
enough.
yeah, but well, I really enjoyed the album. Um, Again, I didn't necessarily know what I was getting into. Um, I sort of knew it would be on the heavier side, but I wasn't sort of. But it was really nice, a really nice blending of different sort of sludge, acid rock, doom, post metal. All these things that are in my wheelhouse
Yeah,
that combined really well.
that's great to
Um,
hear. You may write an album and you record it, and you listen to it so many times, and you kind of lose perspective. It's nice
sure.
to get out hear from other people, what their perspectives on it. So it's greatly appreciated.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's whenever there's a contemporary band that releases a new album that I connect with, I always make a note like, oh yeah, this band can take this spot
Yeah,
moving forward.
yeah. It's always
Um,
great to find a band with a discography that you can explore.
yeah, yeah. So that's great. Yeah, I'm really excited to go back now and check out the other albums. And I'm glad you're obviously this album is coming out next month. I would imagine there's probably other tracks you have in mind for the future.
Yep,
Um,
yeah. We'll just play our shows and working on a few covers like we always do. But yeah, just get back to writing again. Regular process to your schedule. It seems like.
oh, nice. So it sounds like you've got a pretty good work ethic in terms of turning out music.
Yeah, as long as we can jam consistently, we can't help but write.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to keeping track of the output as it comes. Um, if you do end up making it to the states at all at any point, I will. And you're in the Virginia area, then perhaps I'll have the chance to come see you. But if not, good luck with everything. Um, I know the album is great. Go pick it up in a month when it drops. Um, but otherwise, it's been great speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
You as well, Andrew. Thank you so much for the interest and the help promoting the album.
You got it.